I'm Jackie Doucette, and I'm on a mission to discover exactly what life is like beyond retirement. Join me while I chat with people who've already done it, who've retired to something rather than from something. Let's find out together exactly what's waiting for us when we say goodbye to that 9 to 5. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Sandra Snook. And Sandra is also known as the old woman in a van. And that's all I'm going to say about her. And she's going to let us know what life is like in a van. Sandra, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm a part-time van traveler, and that was my retirement gift to myself. You know, I've always loved road tripping. I've always loved camping and wilderness areas. And, you know, I have a lot of children, and some of my kids' friends showed up at our house over the years with their vans, you know, because it's a big movement in their generation. And I was very intrigued because I hate the thought of pulling a trailer or a large RV. I don't want to drive one, and a van was just right. But then I looked at all the, YouTubed myself to death, and I thought, my goodness, I'm so impressed with all of these women who build out their own vans. But I would be a very old woman in a van if I attempted such a thing, an ancient, because I hate building anything. This is not what I do. So for my retirement gift to myself was my van. I had a company up in the Bay Area build it out, and they started the build in the 1st of February in 2020. So I committed at the end of 2019. So and life changed as far as travel went. And so, but I picked up my van in May. It was the best drive through LA ever in my life. And in 2020, I took shorter trips, and I didn't veer too far away because I didn't know exactly what, was going to happen with the pandemic. And I was pre-vaccine, and I am over 60. So I was cautious, and I stayed and did shorter trips. And then last year, as the pandemic wasn't as scary and I had vaccines on board, I took a long trip at 20 some states, and went up from San Diego up through Washington to the San Juan Islands, came diagonal across the US, explored the South where I hadn't spent much time, and then went up to New York for my niece's wedding, and then came back. So it was a great multi-month trip. And I had to get home. Because I have elderly dogs that needed attention at home, and I'm kind of dealing with their healthcare now and going on smaller trips. And since I love the travel, I also felt like for myself, I needed to balance that with some other activities, so I have my blog where I describe my van travels, but I also really have a need to volunteer and contribute. So I was thinking and trying to decide what that was and what I wanted to do. And so I just got my foster care license.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I have 7 children, and my family was formed by adoption and birth children. And I've always been passionate about kids. I never got to stay home with my babies ever. I was a professional woman in, the 80s, 90s and beyond. And I was like working in my hospital room after my babies were born. I just never got that time. And I love babies. So I was like, okay, well, put up or shut up and do this. And so I now have my license for little babies, and I do medically fragile babies. And so I, a week ago, just brought home a 7-week-old baby boy who I'll have short-term. So I'm doing short-term foster care. Then I can go out in my van and recover from that and come back and do it again if I want to. So it's great fun.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we jumped right in there, and you said a whole lot of things. In
I did. And I hadn't told you that I was getting my foster license because I didn't know I'd have it, and I didn't know I'd have a baby when I talked to you. And I'd show him, but I can't. I'm not allowed to put him on video. So he's
of course
thankfully sleeping, which he hasn't done a lot of. So this is quite a miracle. I think this interview was meant to be because he's cooperating. So.
Very nice. So let's take a step back. You gave yourself a van as a retirement gift. I'm sure that when you were in high school, your goal wasn't to be the old lady in the van. So can you talk a little bit about how you got where you are?
Yeah. So I'm a veterinarian by training, and then I worked I'm a pathologist. So I'm not what people think of as a practicing clinical veterinarian. I did research, and I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So I have a passion for science and medicine, and I think that's where everybody always thought I would go. But I also played with dolls, and created these massive families. So as a single mom, I had 2 children by birth. I got divorced. I always wanted a large family, and I'm sort of a put up or shut up kind of person. And so it's like, do it. And so I ended up adopting children. I went from 2 kids to 6 kids in 2 years, and another one joined us later on. And now they're all adults and doing well. But no one's making me a grandma. So like I said, I'm passionate about babies, and I never got to be a stay-at-home baby taker care of. So that's what I'm doing now. But, my real mantra in life, and it's a quote, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but it can paraphrase as, you can't plan your life because then you have a plan, not a life. And I think that I keep that in front of me on my day planner, because I'm an old lady and I like a paper day planner still. And I keep that quote in front of me, because I think of myself almost as a recovering over planner. I needed, and I needed to survive, because I raised a very large family and I had to be very organized. I had a career, so everything was meticulously planned in my life.
Right.
But now it doesn't have to be, and I'm learning to let go of that, and find what's natural in my personality. I think that's one of the first steps, and then following my passions. And what I know about my personality, and I love taking little personality tests online and stuff. And Strength Finders is one that I've really found valuable, and it helping me think about who I am. And I always have to be learning something new. That's who I am. And I think it's critical moving into retirement that you know yourself. So you don't do somebody else's perfect retirement. You do your perfect retirement. Exactly. And for me, it's learning and exploring new things all the time, and challenges. I like complexity, if you haven't figured that out by now. I really kind of enjoy a complex life. And so I set it up to be complicated, and then I have to sink or swim. But that's how I get fun. But it all comes from sort of knowing yourself, I think, and making that plan.
I think that's true. And you led right into my next kind of question area. You talked about planning and how you used to be a planner, but you don't think that that's really the way to live your life. And planning is one of the themes that I'm trying to go with on the show this season, but I'm also using confidence, freedom. And I think those are things that you have in spades in terms of where your life is going and what you're doing, because you struck out on your own. You adopted all these kids. You're a foster mom to babies now. You're driving around. You've got the freedom of the open road in front of you. All of that stuff allows you to be who you are and do what you want when you want it. And I think that that's really important. And it's something that a lot of us don't think about in retirement. We kind of close ourselves off a little bit and think, oh, now I'm done. And what comes next? And that's not the way it is at all. And I think you're saying that retirement kind of opens up the doors. Has it changed your life a little bit, retiring?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my life before, I was an executive in a company, and it was, the center of my work universe was in Belgium. So I was on teleconferences from 5 a.m., on and worked, outrageous hours, and was kind of consumed by work. And I really needed to, even though I loved the science that I did. I was really done with corporate America and the politics of corporate America. And I had to detoxify from that for a year. So I had the van built for sure. And I knew I wanted to get on the road. But otherwise, I really made myself for that first year not commit to much, to sort of sit with myself, because I'm not very good at that. That's a challenge for me. I tend to dive right into things, and I needed to just, be in this new condition and see what it was like and see what pulled to me, and because I thought originally I might go out for, indefinitely in my van, just go out for months and months. Well, no, that's not really for me. A month or two out and then back. I like, I live in a wonderful place, San Diego, and I like being here, and I like being on the road, but I don't want to do either exclusively. But I had to try it out to see what the right balance was going to be. And like I said, I'm really pulled to also volunteer and contribute, in some way. And so I needed to do that too. I couldn't just go out and explore on the road. And I decided to start my blog because of what you said. As I got involved in more online communities with solo women, van lifers or RV and campers, a resounding theme keeps coming out as a lack of confidence and fear. And it saddens me that so many of my woman peers, their friends and family are just these incredible negative Nellies. I mean, they're just constantly telling the women to be afraid of everything in the environment, and discouraging them from doing, anything almost other than sitting at home. And I want to help women understand or believe that they can do things, and that they can follow their dreams. And it's really amazing when you get that opportunity.
So what do you do to stave off any fears that crop up? There's got to be times you're driving along, you're on your own, you're in a brand new place that you've never been. A little bit of doubt creeps in. What do you do?
Absolutely. Well, that's part of it, is like conquering some of those fears. I have a bridge phobia. And when you're driving a van by yourself across the country, there are bridges. You have to cross the Mississippi River. You cannot go to the East Coast without going across the Mississippi River. And I'm much better with bridges. And mountain driving is a little scary for me. I mean, there's a lot of things that I am a little scared of, or a lot scared of. And when you're out on the road by yourself, you have to face those fears. But you're in control of how you face those fears too. So if I have some scary bridges that day, I keep the driving to a couple hours, and I have a plan. I play a playlist, that I can sing out loud to when I'm going over the bridge, and I kind of tackle that. But sometimes I'm done with the bridge, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, time to go to find a Dairy Queen now or something, because it's just, because it is overwhelming, But also, I think women are conditioned to be more afraid of exploring on their own than they need to be, because the statistics, the women a large portion of women seem to be terrified of traveling by themselves, especially road tripping or camping, that they're going to be assaulted. And I have two comments about that. First, the data just doesn't support that, especially if you're out in the wilderness. Your risk is so much lower than it is even in a small town. I mean, it just rarely happens. And second, it rarely happens. And as an old white woman, you are the most invisible person in the universe, to be honest. I mean, people are not there's an advantage to that, because you can always be an observer, and nobody notices that you're around or watching. You really, I don't know if you've noticed that, but you really are invisible. Nobody particularly cares. Maybe other women. It would be women most most of the time who would engage me, if I at a campground or somewhere else, or like getting gas was a common place where people would say, is that your van? And they'd want to see it and stuff, but sometimes some young people, like I'd be at camping and I'd go out during the day and I'd come back and some 20 something year old would have set up a tent in my campsite, and so and I usually just shared my campsite with them because it wasn't that big a deal. I didn't need a tent, and I'd make some friends, but otherwise people don't pay very much attention to you or care about you, and they're not stalking you and trying to hurt you. And I realize that that's a very real fear for people, but the real fears to worry about are kind of our health and injuries, and having a plan to deal with those if you're out traveling by yourself.
Yes, that I was going to say, I think probably breaking down somewhere in the middle of nowhere is something I'd worry about more than being assaulted by somebody when I'm out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
There's probably nobody around.
Right. And if they are, they're people like you, actually, for the most part. And you can always get in your van and drive away if you're in a situation that you feel uncomfortable in too. So, and so it's not, it really, I'd encourage people to not think of that as the issues, but to make a plan for things like breakdowns. You've got to have good coverage to be able to get your vehicle towed and taken care of. You need a reliable vehicle. You need all-terrain wheels so that you can get unstuck. Because I got stuck 3 times on my trip last summer and had to be towed out because mud is not my friend. But it all worked out. And I developed hypertension on my trip last summer, like really, really bad hypertension. So I've been very healthy. And all of a sudden I had to go to the emergency room because my blood pressure was, like 260 over 130. It was really high.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and that's what's going to happen to older women when they're out somewhere, is like something is going to happen to their health. Or if they're hiking by themselves, you have to be able to access help and have an emergency kit with you. And so I use these little Garmin satellite communicators. Yeah. And it has an SOS function. I can send preset text to my family. So if I don't have cell coverage, I can just send them a text saying I'm off grid, but I'm fine. And you can add on evacuation insurance, and it's very cheap. It's like, $11, $15 a month to have a Garmin. And then they will come in and extract you, from a hiking trail somewhere, because that's what's most likely to happen is you're going to fall and hurt your ankle and not be able to get out somewhere by yourself. And you have to have a plan to, you can't be stupid about what your travels, but there's so many ways of putting escape routes in place, or, ways to get help.
The little bit of planning that you do have to have, even when you're trying to live without a plan.
Yeah. And you have to take care of yourself too. Health issues are going to come up. There's no particular reason why I developed hypertension, but 70% of women our age are hypertensive. So, most of us are, it happens. And, but you do need to take care of yourself. And, I hate exercising. Ask me how much I hate exercising. I hate it. But other than hiking, but you have to do it. I don't know about you, but when I hit like 55 or so, it's like I felt my strength and balance dissipating into the ether. Yep. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't let this happen. It will eventually happen, but I need to take care of myself.
Yep.
So that I can stay mobile and be able to do the things that I want to do. And even though I hated it, I had to do it. And so I did. And, I have lost, over the last 6 years, I think I've lost 60 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. I was pretty pudgy, but it's like, I have to do this. I have to take care of myself. And, so I did. It was a big wake up call, but, and I hate exercising so much. I had to for me, what worked was getting a personal trainer, because I won't do it. Otherwise I will not do it. But if I investing in myself and investing in my health is a wise decision, and it took me 6 decades to figure that out. But I have figured it out. Yeah, well, better than 9 decades, right?
Yep.
I don't know. Do you exercise and things? You look fit.
I do, actually. I get up at about 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning every day, and that's when I do all my exercise. Get it out of the way before the day starts, before I'm awake and I don't really notice.
Yeah. It's, one of the fun things about retirement, though, is deciding what you want to do in the morning, to me.
Yep.
Especially since I used to have to be on teleconferences at 5 a.m. And now I really don't book anything before 9 a.m. But interestingly, I still wake up the same time I used to wake up. I was curious to see whether I would move to a later wake up time, but I still wake up before 5. But I use that's like my head time. I read, because I if you've been to my blog, it has a lot of book reviews and book lists, because I'm sort of a voracious reader, and I'm trying to help put a book list together for every state in the country and every province in Canada. So people who are road tripping can find books that will help them understand the places that they're traveling to.
That's fabulous.
So I focus on historical fiction or novels that I think give a great sense of place to an area, and maybe cover an area that you might not go to, because it's not exactly a tourist destination, but it helps you understand the culture of the place that you're from. And I try and include Indigenous works too. So either books written by the Indigenous people from a community or about. And that's been a great awakening for me, was really starting to understand and grasp the diversity of the first people that live on this continent, and reading about them as I am traveling through the areas that they lived in. And it's been a lot of fun. And I also include like cozy romances and mysteries too. But I'm always listening to audiobooks when I am on the road. Yeah,
that's what I do when I'm out walking.
Yeah, and that's the first thing I did exercise-wise, was start walking. But music playlists didn't do anything for me. I get bored after the second time I listened to it, and so I had to. So I discovered audiobooks.
Yeah.
So what speed do you listen to?
What speed?
Yeah. Do you speed them up?
It depends. If I really don't like the narrator, sometimes I speed them up, but usually I listen on the normal, one-time speed.
I found I had to discover the fact that I could speed them up start enjoying audiobooks, because my issue at the 1X is I drift. My attention drifts.
And mine does too. And
if I speed it up, I started out speeding it up just like to 1.25 or 1.5. But just that little boost in speed focuses my brain on the book, and so then I could. And then I just became an addict to audiobooks. I love audiobooks, and that's what got me out walking. Because if I love to read, and if I had a book only on audio and I was engaged in it, then I went out and walked.
That's a good idea, actually, because I do find myself, I can hear the book in the background, but I'm thinking about something else. And then I stop and I realize I haven't heard the last chapter.
Yeah, I know. And then you are doing all this rewinding to re-listen to something. Well, try listening to a little bit faster, and your ears get trained. And I think they use filters now too, so that you don't have as much distortion. It doesn't sound like the chipmunks when you listen to it at a high speed, because my ear is so trained now that most books I usually start at 2x now.
Wow.
And it's been years of kind of developing and training my ear to listen. And then if there's a lot of accents or something, I may go down, or if it's something I'm not as engaged in, I'll crank it up, because I also have a hard time not finishing a book if I started. Like I'm going to believe in the author that they have something that's going to come through by the end.
Yep.
Feel like that?
Actually, yes. And right now I'm listening to a book, and it's an author that I enjoy, but the narrator I'm not enjoying. And his intonation, his pauses are not in the right places in so many of the sentences. And it's just, have you read the story? Do you know what you're doing?
That happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's making it hard to continue. I want to get through the story because I like it, but yeah, this particular narrator is not good. So I've scrolled through a bunch of the books to see which ones, this narrator is on, and thank goodness there's only one more.
Yeah. Do you get most of your audiobooks from your library or from Audible?
Actually, I use Scribed most of the time.
Oh, okay. Okay, I've heard of them. Yeah. I'm really lucky. The San Diego County Library, not the city library, but if anybody's out there from San Diego, the county library has almost every audiobook that you would want to listen to. And they have used the Libby app, and it's really, really excellent app. So it's the way to go.
Yes, definitely. If you can do it, if you can get them for free, that's way better than paying for, Scribed or Audible or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your trip or trips. Yeah. What do your kids think of you going off on your own? Were they happy to hear that you were doing it? Were they a little nervous about it?
No, my kids are just fantastic. And I started taking road trips as a child. My parents took road trips, and so my brother and I would go. And I took my kids on a road trip every year almost. Occasionally we would fly somewhere, but it was a large family, so mostly we did a van. And so they know that's who I am. And in fact, there's one funny story with my oldest daughter, because she was in doing a year abroad in France, and she went on a long hiking trip through part of the Camino that's in France. And I found out after she left that she was hiking by herself. And as a mom, I went like, oh my gosh, you were a Girl Scout, you don't go off on by yourself. And I called her dad, who, we divorced when she was, in kindergarten. And I was going, oh my gosh, do you know what she's doing? Oh, and he just paused and he said, well, do you think she got it from me? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, because I was always going off on trips by myself, and before I was married and had kids, like I went off to Kenya and Ethiopia back in the early 80s, and so my kids said that's just part of our family, is doing these trips. And part of what I did last summer was also go and visit my children who live all over the country. Nice. So I see them, and and like I said, I have that Garmin where I can send them a text, and I do that. I'm very religious about sending a text if I don't have cell coverage, so that they know that I'm okay. But I don't think they've ever worried about me. And they're also great travelers. They all do their own thing and travel and kind of push the envelope. And I'm so proud of them for doing that. And so, it was a gift my parents gave me, and I hope it's a gift I've given my children. And so, no, they're my biggest cheerleaders, and I'm really grateful for that, because, again, in the communities, I see a lot of women have this dream, and they're all ready to go, and then their family finds out about it, and they it feels almost like emotional abuse from the children to their their moms, on trying to sabotage their ability to their desire to go out and explore. And that makes me sad. So I hope people push back against that some, and it is hard. But my kids are always been, we're mutual cheerleaders of each other's passions, and that makes a big difference.
Exactly, it does. It must be hard for people who are in your shoes and go off and do something, knowing that people at home aren't happy with it. That's got to hurt too, a little bit, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And you worry, because you don't want to make your family unhappy or make them worry and stuff. And so I can see why some women would abandon their dreams because of that, because the pressure can become very relentless. And and also I'm single, so I'm not married, and I've kind of come to peace with the fact that there's a lot of things I do really well, but not relationships. So, and it's just nothing's worked out for me, and so I'm making lemonade out of it because I can do what I want to do. And
Exactly.
so I guess, in some ways that's an advantage, in retirement. It's also really nice, I'm sure, to grow old with another person. But I also see there are many women whose their spouse doesn't like to travel and they want to travel. And it's the fortunate ones whose spouses are fine and encouraging and say, go, and they will go out for a month or so and then come home to the spouse that doesn't want to travel. And so.
So we've mentioned a couple of times your website. It's The Old Woman in a Van. Is that?
It's oldwomaninavan.com.
Old Woman. Okay. Oldwomaninavan.com. And I'll make sure it goes in the show notes. I have looked at it, actually, believe it or not. And I love all the things that are there, the talking about the van and talking about the books you read and a little bit of everything. And I think that's important because all of the different aspects are part of what you're doing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Now I'm kind of puzzling on what I should do with, the other half of my life, like the foster parenting, if I should add that to my blog. I mean, it's kind of goes off track then, or if I should start another blog, because that's for people who do love children, there's such a need for foster care, and there's so many different ways you can contribute to being a foster parent, or you can provide short-term respite care, which is only a day or two at a time. You can do a longer-term placement. You can pick your ages, that you're comfortable with taking care of it. And so, there's if you are passionate about children, that's another wonderful thing to do in retirement. It keeps you young.
I wonder if that's something that you could kind of connect with traveling in your van, maybe doing the foster care and going to another city and spending a couple of days somewhere and doing things that way. I don't know, just it kind of popped into my head.
Maybe. I mean, I do know people, other veterinary friends, for example, who they travel and they'll go sign up to do spay-neuter clinics, for example, in various communities. A friend of mine from vet school just spent a couple weeks on a reservation in Arizona. And I think in 2 days they did over 150 spay neuters.
Wow.
And then she went home, and another friend is going out to the Dakotas to do that later this summer as well. So I think there's a lot. If you look for it, you can find it.
Exactly. Sure. That's So we've talked about a lot of different things. If you were asked to give one piece of advice to someone heading into retirement, not sure what they're doing, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say first, if they were really at a loss of what they're going to do, that they just take a few months, maybe even a year, of not making many plans or any plans, and sitting with themselves and kind of shedding the old you and finding out who that new person is. It's a lot like when you're raising children. If you just sit and watch your children and give them playtime, free time, that's not planned and orchestrated, then you start seeing who they are, and they can find out who they are, so and that doesn't mean you just sit in a chair and don't do anything during that year, but you don't make commitments, for longer term things, so you play and let go and then see, and keep an open mind, and also know that even in retirement, you get to keep reinventing yourself. So, you might, travel in a van or do some road tripping or cruises for a year or so, and then you want to do something else. You lose the travel bug and you want to do a different thing. And, I guess that's why I would encourage people just to be nice to themselves, and first give themselves some freedom to actually figure out what they want to do. Because again, if you've worked a normal career or job like most people have in America our age, you might not even know what you want to do.
Yep.
With free time. I don't know. And when you retired, was it very different than what you thought? Are you doing different things?
Well, when this actually airs, it'll have been a little while, but to be honest, I retired from my job a week ago. So,
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So we'll see what it's going to be like. And I plan to do pretty much what you've said. I'm going to take some time off, see what it is I want to do, kind of let my interests lead the way for a little while. I'm going to be doing some traveling, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Like, one thing I never expected I would do, I thought I was completely done with my, my career related work. But about a year and a half, almost 2 years after I retired, some people contacted me about consulting in my area of expertise. And I really struggled with that decision, but I did decide to do it. But I put very, very strong boundaries on it, so it didn't take over my life again. And I limit it to 10 hours a week. And it keeps my brain active, and so and I make money, so it's a little bit so I know this isn't about finances, but it delays my having to withdraw from my 401ks,
exactly,
as I'm doing that, and I can make enough with 10 hours a week, and I can do it on the road, so I'm very, very transparent with the companies I'm consulting for, who I am and what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. That is so wonderful, because I never, I always had to just do what I was told. And now I can just say, no, this is what I can do. And yes, I do travel in a van, but I'm happy to find a place I have cell coverage if I know there's a meeting, and I will, I can work on the road, and I do. And it worked out really well. I would only say that because I started doing it really quick, and I have an LLC for my blog, and it's oldwomaninavan.com. And I decided not to create a new LLC, and I didn't know that you could do this thing doing business as and kind of use a different name. So there's some things I could have done, but when I signed my contract, it's just, I changed the front part of my email, but it's still at oldwomaninavan.com. And the business people and the finance people so they're like, is this a real person? What is this? But it's been positive, because everybody remembers who I am. So, and again, it's just, I am who I am. And if a person doesn't want to work with me as a consultant because of that, that's fine.
Exactly.
They can find a corporate-y person again, but, and so I am doing that now. On a limited basis, but again, it's really nice to have control over it.
Yep, that's it, exactly. I got asked if I would be open to doing some consulting, and I said sure, as long as I can do it from Mexico. It's
oh yeah,
wherever I happen to be. I'm not going to be sitting at home waiting for it.
I live in San Diego. I'm 15 miles from the border. I've never been to Mexico. And there isn't any reason why I haven't been to Mexico. I just haven't. It just hasn't been where I've gone. And so I'm looking for some van meetups, I think, and I'm going to start doing some exploring in Mexico as well, because it's just silly that I haven't been there. Yep. I've traveled all over the world, and I haven't been to Mexico, and it's in my own backyard. So
maybe the next spot.
Yeah, an awful lot of van people head down to Baja. And that area in the winter time. So there's a lot of meetups and kind of group activities. And I haven't done as much of that. That's another thing people need to know about themselves. Are they introverts or extroverts? I think that's a really critical feature.
Very important.
And especially if you're going to if you're contemplating something like solo travel or van or RV travel, because that's a solo endeavor, and you are by yourself. And whatever baggage you have at home, you take on the road with you, and it if anything, it's amplified because you don't have distractions of the things that you have at home. And so, you get the opportunity to process all of your pent up baggage, along the way.
It might be good or bad.
It's van life and travel. It's not all the Instagrammable.
No. That's the same with normal everyday life. It's not all put on Instagram and Facebook either. There's the real stuff.
Yeah. But as I always tell my children, it's unfortunate, but the things that we learn the most from are generally
Problems.
Not the good things that happen to us, but the challenges that we face. And those are the things that we actually tell stories about later on because we overcame them. They become part of your internal folklore. But in the moment, they might not be very pleasant. So.
Yep, that's true.
But you have to know yourself. If you're an extrovert and you go van lifing, you need to find ways to connect with people and the meetups. And there are loads and loads of that. There's a group called Sisters on the Fly, which is all made up of mostly older women, but all solo women campers. Many of them are like trailer and RV, and then there's vans, and they have get-togethers all over the country all the time and stuff. And there are other groups like that as well. So you could spend your entire time on the road caravanning with other people, being in an incredibly social situation. I don't do that because I'm like an extreme introvert, really.
Well, it's good to know that there's something for everybody, because I'm sure that in the listeners, there are introverts, there are extroverts, there are people who can't wait to go out in a van, and others that say, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah. So, well, it's all about self-awareness, right? You have the best retirement if you have self-awareness of who you are. And if your life circumstances have really prevented you from learning that and doing that exploration, there's no time like the present. And when you retire is a great time to start really understanding yourself and who you are and what makes you who you are. And then as you learn that, then you start the things that you want to do bubble up to the top.
Yeah, exactly.
I always ask myself, am I going to regret not doing X when I'm trying to make a decision? Am I going to do it? Am I going to regret not doing it? And often that really helps me decide whether or not to do something. Now, do you have a special, kind of
that's actually one of the things that I think as well is I think about it is, what am I getting out of it? Is it going to last me a while? Like, if I do this, is the benefit going to outlast the not doing it? Kind of same idea as what you're saying.
Yeah.
Am I going to regret it? So I look at it from both sides. Am I going to regret doing it? Maybe sometimes that happens, but usually it's gee, I wish I had done. And so it's
because you get to our age and you realize that more of your life's behind you than in front of you. And there's no guarantee how many good years we're going to have, right? I hope I have a couple decades still of being able to get out and about and hike and things. But you never know. And so I think there's more of a urgency to make sure that I don't waste this opportunity I have. Right.
Yeah, and that's it. Exactly. I think that's an important thing for everybody to remember, is that you've only got right now. You don't know, how many right nows there are going to be in the future, or if there are going to be any. So you've got to take advantage of what you can in the moment.
Yeah. Now I detect are you from the upper Midwest or Canada?
I'm in Canada. Yes.
Okay. Well, I've driven definitely from like the Great Lakes all the way west. And I've been to select cities on the east, but I have a lot more of Canada to explore now that it's opened up again. Yep. My ultimate trip is the Dempster Highway up to the Arctic Circle, and to spend several months in Alaska. It's sort of the big kahuna trip for me, and see the Northern Lights. But I love the open road in Canada.
There's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it, but it's really, I love that wide open space, and the mountains are gorgeous too. And yeah.
So I think this is a good place to end before we start talking about how wonderful Canada is.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being with me today, Sandra. I've really enjoyed it. I've got a lot of really good ideas about things that I want to do now because of this.
Well, thank you so much. And, to your guests out there, if you've retired, have fun and let me know, that people can connect to me on the blog and stuff too, because I love to meet up with people, as I do travel around. It's always a lot of fun to meet people that I only know online and then have a coffee with them somewhere. That's
That's
yeah.
great.
So if people are intrigued by my story, welcome to reach out to me. They can always send me a direct email through my blog and strike up a friendship.
That'd be great. Thanks very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? Head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca/rocking it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.